Hey, it's Chris. Here's how I use my iPad Pro on a really productive day. Plus, I'll throw in some super useful tips as we go. On a really productive day, I wake up at 4 a.m. Then I grab some cold brew, usually Grady's or Chameleon. Then I head into the office and tell Siri to turn the lights on. And then I sit down with the iPad Pro to get a couple of solid work hours in before anybody else is even up. Now, I don't always think the clearest that early, but it does seem to be when I get the most done. Of course, one of the first things I do is get into my email. And at the moment, I'm back in Apple Mail, although it seems to be hiding messages from me from time to time, only the important ones. Even so, here's an Apple Mail tip for you. Don't forget that you can swipe over on the attachments menu to include a quick Apple Pencil note or a sketch. So if I got a really exciting sale or commission, that'll wake me right up. But if not, then I'll head over to Twitter and I'll just scroll through a little bit while I'm waiting for the coffee to hit. Now I understand, I'm one of those weird morning people that gets up early when most people probably hate getting up that early. But for me, it's a time to focus and be hyper productive without any distractions. And for me, that usually means two things, either writing or editing. So the whole script for that recent iPhone accessories video that I just published was done in one of these early morning writing sessions. And here's a quick tip for you that I recently discovered. If you have a ton of apps, sometimes it takes a while to dig through your app library, but you can actually just swipe down in that library view for an alphabetical list, which sometimes is just quicker. Now these days, you guys are probably figuring out I'm pretty excited about crypto. I can geek out about it just as much as I can Apple hardware. But if you're interested in it or you're not, it is something I feel like you really need to understand. And I spent many of my recent early mornings putting together the enormous script for my Crypto and Web3 for Absolute Beginners course. Now, most of the course was written in IA Writer on the iPad Pro until the script got so long, it was so packed full of useful information that the app actually started lagging. But once it was done, you guys know what I did. I put it in Jarvis, my favorite AI writing app, which really helps me tighten things up, rewrite the things that need to be so that it's easier for people to read and to understand. And if you're new around here, I'll link it up in the description for you. But when I don't have a huge project that I'm working on, if I'm just taking regular notes, that still happens in Apple Notes. One tip for Apple Notes on the iPad is to select a folder and hit that ellipsis icon with the 3 dots, and you'll get a bunch of options. Like, a lot of people don't realize you can change how your notes are sorted, or you can convert an already existing folder to a smart folder, which auto-populates based on tags, which Apple Notes now supports. So make sure that you're using those hashtags. And right now I've got 2 notes widgets open on my home screen for super easy access. Now, frequently throughout the day, not just in the morning, I'll make some handwritten notes and sketches using the Apple Pencil in Apple Notes. And that's really one of the instances when I super appreciate my paper-like screen protector. Now, I actually like the double tap feature on the Apple Pencil, which switches over to the eraser by default. But I know for some people they get annoyed when it activates on accident. And if that's you, you can actually go into settings and just turn that off completely. And if I'm really thinking over something new and I want to cement my thoughts on it, then I'll stick it in MindNode, the mind mapping app, and I'll think through it there. I've been talking about that app for years, but it's crazy. I'm still using it. I also find myself dipping into my mind all throughout the day because it's the main place that I store stuff that I want to easily find later without having to tag and organize it when I put it in. I've said it before, but I'll say it again right now. The search functionality in my mind is ridiculous. The whole reason I use it, better than any other notes app I've ever seen ever. And actually, I currently have a My Mind wallpaper on my iPad, and I'll link that up for you as well. They got a whole stash. So on a really productive day, I'll finish up whatever I need to from the day before, or maybe I'll write a whole script before breakfast. Because after breakfast, what I like to do is shoot the A-roll, the talking head stuff like you're watching right now. And honestly, it can take 1 to 2 hours for me to sit down and shoot enough A-roll, which I then chop up later and whittle down to like 10 minutes. It's crazy. So the iPad Pro usually comes with me down to the studio so I can check my script in between takes, because I don't use a teleprompter. People ask me that all the time, but I like to keep it flowing a little bit more naturally and just kind of reference that script more like notes. And to make sure I don't miss talking about something important, I go into the control center, I long press on the text button, and I make sure I'm only adjusting the text size in the Notes app, and then I crank it all the way to the top so it's huge. Because when the text is the normal size and I'm just flipping around and I'm talking and I come back, sometimes I skip over things, and there's nothing more annoying, trust me, than shooting a video and having to go back and redo some audio. Now, after lunch, that's usually prime time for me to try to schedule some meetings. So whether that's a super secret press briefing or just a regular meeting with somebody on Zoom or FaceTime or whatever, that happens on the iPad Pro as well. And what I do for the best background I can come up with is set up that iPad over in the corner of the office on that sideboard that I got from Article, so that when people meet with me, they can see those nano leaf lights in the background with that custom C design up on the wall. And actually, it's during these business meetings when I absolutely love the iPad Pro center stage feature that keeps me in the shot no matter where I roam around. We all have days when unscheduled calls and meetings pop up out of nowhere. So if you just rolled out of bed or something and you gotta be on camera, you can just go ahead and hit the effects button and then use your Memoji and cover up that crazy hair. So in the afternoon, obviously, is when I get another solid chunk of work done. And sometimes that means video editing, but also sometimes I'm doing research or doing something like sketching. So I actually feel like the iPad Pro was instrumental in helping me put together my crypto and Web3 for Absolute Beginners course. Why? Because I did 95 or 97% of all the non-video stuff on the iPad Pro, and that includes using Procreate to do some hand-drawn sketches and illustrations, which I then popped into the course. Procreate is a must for me. It's my go-to when I have to do some sketching. Not only for the actual tools, but also for the ability to animate and play things back so easily. And just in case you're interested, one of my favorite Procreate tips is that you can clear an entire layer super quickly by scrubbing 3 fingers back and forth across the screen. It's a big time saver, for me at least. Now, just some behind the scenes info for you. While I was putting my course together, I was using a platform called Podia, and I was managing a lot of that backend on the iPad Pro, which is crazy because a few years ago, before it had a desktop class browser, I really couldn't have done that, I feel like. And the other tool that I was using on the iPad Pro was Lead Pages, the landing page builder. And honestly, I'll say it again, if it wasn't for my video editing and stuff, and yes, I know LumaFusion exists and it does a lot and it's cool, but if it wasn't for my preferred video editing workflow on the Mac, I could get away with doing everything on the iPad Pro. Now, something that's very new for me is managing a newsletter on the iPad Pro, and that's something that I hit in the afternoon as well, usually at 4 o'clock every day on the button for an hour. And this is the newsletter for the Great Onboarding, our new sub brand, which is crypto focused, helping people sort through all the fire hose of information about crypto every day and just picking out 3 things they need to know about that they can read in 5 minutes or less. And I'm running all that on Substack, which so far has been a really great platform that seems to work really well with the iPad Pro. Now, I'm pointing out specifically that Substack works well on the iPad Pro because not everything does still. For instance, Tweet Hunter, which is something that helps you put together Twitter threads and has some AI functionality as well. I'll link it up for you so you can check it out because it's cool, just not on the iPad Pro. It was glitching out all over the place and was basically unusable. And for that reason, even though I could do it on my Mac, I canceled my subscription. And instead, I moved over to a platform called Typefully, which does work really well with the iPad Pro. And it's what people like Julian Shapiro and David Perel use for their epic Twitter threads. Now, of course, when the workday is all done, I got to do some decompression, right? I got to chill out and relax a little bit. Usually I have like a half an hour, maybe. So sometimes I'll hit the Xbox, get a little Halo in. And more recently, I've been checking out the Oculus Quest 2, which I'm familiarizing myself with right now so I can compare it to Apple's upcoming AR and VR headset. But then again, sometimes I'll just get some gaming in on the iPad Pro itself using the PlayStation controller. And it's kind of how the iPad Pro fits into a typical day around here, actually being used, the stuff that I do with it. So if you ask me, how crucial is the iPad Pro to my workflow? I would probably say, you know what, I could get away with an iPad Air and the Magic Keyboard there too and be very similar because I'm not a CAD designer or anything like that. Personally, I really like having the latest, greatest feature set here that's gonna be supported for several years to come. Even though personally, I'm not really making the most of this screen in terms of watching crazy HDR content or anything because I got the big LG TV, for that, and I got a smaller one upstairs. So I don't really need to. Now, for those of you that do want to make the most out of your HDR viewing experience, here's a pro tip for fixing that blooming effect that you get on your mini LED when you're in a dark room. If you're watching some Dolby Vision content, set your brightness to 50% with auto brightness off. For HDR10 content, set your brightness to 100% with auto brightness off. And for SDR content, set your brightness to 13% with the auto brightness on. So shout out to General Ablation Board on Reddit for those settings. But yeah, am I happy with it? Am I super satisfied with it? Absolutely. So you can tell I don't have a huge ultra-wide monitor on the desk right now. I used to, and I might again in the future. I'm kind of rethinking what I want to do with my desk setup. That'll be an upcoming video. But I love having just a minimal setup with just the iPad Pro on the desk and all this room around it. It's really like a magical thing. People think you gotta pile your desk with all this stuff because you see it on Instagram, but there's something about having a super minimal setup actually that I really like. That's it for this video. Hopefully you guys liked it. I'm gonna link up all the stuff that I talked about down in the description so you can check it out. I would also love for you to check out our Instagram and Twitter accounts. It's @DailyTech, TEKK on Instagram and Twitter. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Later.